Hi, today I'm going to explain a drama show called The Devil Judge. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The story opens in a dystopian South Korea where corruption, unemployment, and inequality have ravaged the society. This has resulted in nationwide protests, and the streets look like a war zone. To divert the public's attention, the country's president Hyo Jung-se gives an impassioned speech that's broadcast to the nation. He has come up with a dramatic step where high-level court cases will now be televised for everyone to see. All the citizens will also be able to participate in the hearings by voting in their verdicts through an app. These public hearings will be presided over by Kang Yo-han, a judge with a public reputation of being ruthless. Unbeknownst to the people, President Hyo is working for the sole benefit of a group of ultra-rich businessmen who represent Korea's largest conglomerates. The following day, Kim Gon, a young associate judge, reaches his new job at the Supreme Court. He will be Kang's deputy on the controversial new live trial show. It is revealed that he was handpicked for this job by Associate Justice and his ex-professor Min Jeng-ho. The old man is extremely suspicious of Kang's rapid rise in power and wants his student to keep an eye out for him. Shortly afterwards, Kim gets set up in the office, which he'll be sharing with fellow young associate judge, Oh Jin-ju. She will be the third member of the bench in the live trial show, and it turns out she's a massive fan of Kang. Elsewhere, the first case to be televised on the live trial show is decided. It will be against Chairman Ju Il-do of Ju Chemical, who is accused of releasing harmful toxins in a river that has caused massive damage to a nearby village. At the office of Ju Chemicals, a legal team goes over their strategy for the trial and decide they will be pleading not guilty. They will argue that Chairman Ju couldn't have known there were toxins in the industrial waste. In the worst-case scenario, he'll be charged with negligence, resulting in death, which has a maximum sentence of 5 years. Chairman Ju is about to throw a fit, but his attorney, Ko In-guk, assures that he'll only have to serve a year or so before getting released on parole. At the courthouse, Kim asks Justice Min to give him a key to the storage room. He wants to access Chairman Just 20-year-old court records. It is revealed that the present Justice Minister Cha Kyung-hee was once a prosecutor. During his time, Cha quietly helped Chairman Ju out of legal trouble several times. When she later ran for assembly, Ju financially assisted her campaign. Now Minister Cha is just standing by while Kang, who she has been strongly supporting, publicly tries Chairman Ju. Kim is fully convinced that this will be a sham trial to conceal the businessman's crimes. That night, Kim asks his police friend, Soo Hyun, for an audio transmitting device used in spying. He doesn't tell her why he needs it, but the latter sets it up for him anyway. The next day, Kim reaches his workplace early and slips into Kang's office. He searches for a good spot to plant the audio transmitter and eventually puts it under a desk. But before he has a chance to sneak back out, Kang shows up. This forces Kim to lie that he was here to borrow a book, and he manages to get away. Throughout the day, Kim listens in on his superior's phone conversations via the audio transmitter. He hears Kang assure Minister Cha that the trial will go according to the law. Kang also talks to someone about setting up a meeting with a doctor and promises to speak with Chairman Ju's attorney. Now convinced of his superior's motives, Kim shares his findings with Justice Min. But they both know there's not enough evidence to prove any wrongdoing. The only thing they can do is keep an eye on Kang at tomorrow's trial. The day of the first episode of the live trial show soon arrives, and everyone from President Hyo to ordinary citizens eagerly tune in. The trial is intended to restore the public's waning trust in the courts, but it kicks off more like a game show, complete with an MC who explains how to vote via an app. The judges also make a striking entrance with Kang clad in white, flanked by Oh Jin-ju and Kim in black. Moments later, the trial opens with the prosecution laying out the case against Ju Chemicals for dumping toxic waste into local rivers. They allege it has caused 11 deaths, and many more people have been left with lasting health disabilities. After the prosecutor's emotional appeal to the jury, 70% of viewers vote guilty. Next, the defense comes in and chides the prosecutor for his theatrics. Attorney Co argues that the wastewater treatment facilities were damaged after an embankment collapse, but Ju Chemicals only took an hour to shut it down and fix the leak. A heated argument then breaks out between the two parties, forcing Kang to announce a recess. Upon reconvening, Oh Jin-ju questions the defense on the strange timing of this accident that damaged the facilities a mere day after the first death. But Attorney Co argues that the first death can't be tied to the case since there was no autopsy done. In the meantime, Kim perks up when the defense calls a doctor to the stand. He assumes this is the same doctor who Kang arranged a meeting with last night. The doctor testifies that the water does contain heavy metals, but argues they could come from any number of pollutants. This causes the guilty vote to go from well over 70% to slightly over 50%. Suddenly, Kim asks for clarification on the specific pollutants found in the water. He even gets the doctor to reluctantly admit that the most prevalent pollutant was cyanide. This forces the defense to go into damage control mode, and they argue that cyanide is only harmful in high concentrations. The doctor also asserts that he's the expert here, so they should listen to him. Kim tries to fire back, but Kang puts a stop to the discussion and suggests they give the doctor some water. Shortly after, Kang concernedly checks to make sure they didn't accidentally give him a water bottle with the river sample. His intuition turns out to be true as the doctor spits out the water in a panic, proving that the river water is indeed dangerous. Soon afterwards, the defense gets another blow as a factory employee reveals there were contamination issues from before the embankment accident. He even reported the issue to Chairman Ju, but the shady businessman dismissed his concerns, saying he didn't care what happened to elderly residents who'd already lived a full life. Chairman Ju denies the allegations, but the employee continues yapping. He says that his nickname is Dr. Safety for his adherence to the safety guidelines. Upon hearing this, Kim is unsure about which Dr. Kang met with last night. Meanwhile, the guilty votes climb past 90% as Chairman Ju's denials get more desperate. Kang pushes him into a corner, calling his actions murder by gross negligence. This is when Chairman Ju changes tactics and begins to cry, admitting he was told about the contamination but didn't think it would cause so much pain. This is exactly in line with Attorney Ko's worst-case scenario. Kang then confirms that Chairman Ju is admitting to professional negligence resulting in death. Kim is shocked upon hearing this, and he finally realizes this was the outcome Kang was working towards all night long. Next, Kang announces that there's not enough evidence for intent to murder, but negligence is clear. The maximum sentence for professional negligence resulting in death is 5 years. However, a recent bill allows judges to deliver a cumulative sentence accounting for all victims. Kang reads all the victims' names while their pictures scroll on the screen. The family members in the gallery cry as Kang shockingly sentences Chairman Ju to 235 years in prison. Kim is left in complete disbelief by the outcome while a loud cheer erupts in the courtroom. At this moment, Kang has a flashback to a burning church where he is trying to reach out to someone standing on the other side of a rubble. That someone looks very much like Kim Go-eun, the associate judge. After their successful broadcast trial, Kang takes his team for a fancy dinner. Once they are seated, He shares that he likes to hunt in his free time and even describes the sensation of shooting an animal as thrilling.
He continues the violent imagery, saying that because he can't taste well, he experiences food through the act of tearing and crushing it with his fangs. But Kim points out that most people just call those teeth. Meanwhile, Oh Jin-ju tries to ease the tension and wonders if Kang's taste buds are desensitized due to eating high-end food his whole life. The judge admits he grew up wealthy, but his father was a vicious loan shark. Once more, Kim snoops in with a pointed remark and calls his father a heartless jerk. But Kang fires back, saying that Kim would know since his family was also in deep debt. He then callously brings up Kim's parents' double harakiri, which left him an orphan. Although the judge apologizes right away, Kim is already hurt, so he excuses himself, saying he has a weak stomach. Later, as Kim is on his way home, a sports car zooms past him. Lee Young-min, the rich brat behind the wheel, almost runs over a table full of people. He then almost hits an elderly man hauling a cart and knocks him over. Kim, who has been witnessing the incident, rushes to help the man up. But the rich brat offers a very lazy apology and speeds off. Meanwhile, Minister Cha pays a visit to the Social Responsibility Fund, or SRF. She meets with the fund's chairman, Seo Jong-hak, and accuses him of teaming up with Kang for this surprise verdict. It is obvious that no one in the government had expected Ju to be found guilty. Seo denies teaming up with anyone but thinks winning over the public wasn't a bad strategy. On Minister Cha's way out, a secretary stops her and shows that the ruling party's approval rating went up by 17% after the trial. This is good news for Minister Cha, who's poised for a presidential run. The next day, Kim goes to see Kang on the pretense of returning the book he borrowed. The judge invites him to sit and the two men indulge in a conversation. Kim brings up Jang Ki-young, the factory worker who gave the final testimony in JU Chemicals case. Turns out, he had previously given a different statement which supported his boss, Chairman Ju. Kim says that he's never seen a witness flip on the stand like that. Kang argues he might have felt guilty, but Kim thinks he tried too hard to make Chairman Ju a murderer. When Kang argues that everything turned out well, the junior retorts that trials should be constitutional. But Kang stands on his point and says the powerful use whatever means necessary to escape while the powerless victims mourn. Once Kim comes out of the office, he takes out his phone and stops recording. It turns out he had been recording their conversation this whole time. He then calls and asks to meet with his cop friend, Soo-hyun, at a nearby convenience store. They later hear the recording of Kang talking about the factory worker nicknamed Dr. Soo-hyun doesn't find it strange that the witness changed his testimony. And when Kim implies that Kang manipulated the witness, she warns him not to disparage the national hero in public or someone might jump him. Meanwhile, Lee is again being a public menace in his sports car. A poor mother and her young son have the misfortune of being in his path. She swerves to avoid his car but ends up crashing her vehicle on a sign. Thankfully, both mother and son are all right for the time being. Coincidentally, this accident happens right in front of Kim again. He and Soo-hyun chase after Lee's car, but it is obvious they are never going to catch it. At this moment, a third car, being driven by 9 other than Kang, enters the chase. He flies past Soo-hyun's car and manages to cut Lee off, forcing him to stop. Moments later, Soo-hyun and Kim arrive while both men are getting out of their cars. Kang leisurely dons a pair of gloves, and then pulls a sledgehammer out of his trunk. Kim watches on as The judge raises the hammer and starts destroying Lee's precious car. In a surprising twist, Kong slips a bag of white powder from his sleeve and pretends he found it in Lee's car. The judge even lets the spoiled brat touch the bag so it'll have his fingerprints. He makes it clear that he can make this into evidence should Lee repeat his actions. Kong then gifts him a Metro card and speeds away in his own sports car. The next day, Soo-hyun goes to see the witness Jang Ki-young for more information. But he refuses to speak to her and even slams the door on her face. Soo-hyun next interviews the doctor who testified in the first trial. He tells her about how he almost got into an accident after drinking the water he was given at the courthouse. He's sure it was spiked, although nothing showed up on his blood test. The following day, Lee has a meltdown at his workplace. He had ordered a cake but it didn't taste exactly like he wanted. It turns out he's the vice president and is a menace here, just like he's on the road. Later, he takes out a secret stash to take the edge off. But his little bag of white powder just makes him think of Kong. At the courthouse, Oh Jin-ju is disappointed to learn that Kong switched out their next case. Instead of the complex case she studied for, they'll be hearing a simple assault case where the penalty is only a fine. The perpetrator, a young man, has committed assault many times but always settled. Despite all the money he used to settle, he's suspiciously listed as being unemployed. Jin-ju and Kim observe that leaving out his occupation might have been intentional if the police wanted to go easy on him. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun has been scouring the internet for articles and finds one negative comment that reads, "Kong Yo-han is the devil." She then calls Kim and says she has already located the poster. Of the comment. Later down the week, Kim visits a priest who knew Kong as a child. The priest recalls that the judge was a quiet kid with a dark, brooding nature. One day, a bird got into the classroom and when it landed in front of his deskmate, Kong killed it. After that, he was ostracized and called a monster. Both the rich and poor kids in the class started bullying him. After a few days, the rich kids' belongings started to disappear, and the poor kids were getting blamed. Kong watched from the last seat as a fight broke out among the students. That night, Kim rushes into Kang's office to retrieve the audio transmitter device. But it's not under the desk anymore. Just then, the elusive judge emerges from the shadows and drops the listening device. But before the two men can confront each other, they hear a beeping noise from behind a picture hung on the wall. Kim realizes that it is a bomb and leaps to tackle Kong. Right on cue, the wall explodes and they're sent flying back as the glass windows shatter.
Yeah, the wolves howling at the moon. Neon lights flickering out too soon. Shadows crawl across the empty streets. Echoes where the night heart beats. Rusted bones grind the silent air. Lonely whispers through the desperate prayer. Eyes of fire in the midnight dark. City screams with a vengeful spark. Silent air, lonely whispers through the desperate prayer. Eyes of fire in the midnight dark. City screams with a vengeful spark. Roar like thunder through the storm. Tear it down till it's born. Rise from the ashes of defeat. Feel the pulse, feel the heat. Broken dreams line the pavement cracks. Haunted faces on the heavy sacks. Chasing ghosts in the dead of night. In the black, waiting for the light. God tells a tale too deep. Secrets buried where the weary sleep. Never stop, never back down. Crown the king of this ghost town. Screaming out till the silence breaks. Turn the night till the dawn awakes. Blood and sweat on the battlefield. Truth revealed, wounds healed. defeat. Feel the pulse, feel the heat. Roll the heat. Roar like thunder through the storm. Tear it down till it's born. Rise from the ashes of defeat. Feel the pulse, feel the heat. Broken chains under pavement cracks. Haunted faces under heavy sacks. Chasing ghosts in the dead of night. In the block I'm waiting for the leads. Broken dreams under pavement cracks. Haunted faces under heavy sacks. Haunted faces under heavy sacks. On the balls, feel the heat. Roar like thunder through the storm. Tear it down till it's born. Rise from the ashes of defeat. Feel the pulse, feel the heat. Walk the broken dreams line the pavement cracks. Haunted faces under heavy sacks.